of the Animal Farm LT sheet. Like I said, it's something that can really help you when it comes to a test like an ECA test or some sort of test that the state is giving you, that if you don't really know what you're reading, which I have had that happen to me before, I will read a passage from the AP test and I will say, oh my gosh, even as a teacher, I'm confused about what this says, like especially when it comes to poetry. I really struggle with poetry. I kind of broke it down into 21 questions, and that 21 questions are things that are important about the text. And a lot of my students last year would always complain, like they'd say, we hate how you break it down, but it's just, it helps to understand the theme. It helps to understand like how all the mechanisms go together to make this work of art, honestly, Animal Farm is. So, okay, so the number 12, this is a question on the final. So there's three different types of characters. There's the flat static character. That is Jones. Okay, flat means he's not complex. And the S, static, means he does not undergo a psychological change. Like, yes, he experienced defeat, but he was a loser from the beginning, and he's a loser at the end of the story too. Like, they just have constantly like him being at the Red Lion, drinking and just failing. So I would say he doesn't undergo a psychological change. Also, Mrs. Jones, she's not complex. She doesn't undergo psychological change. Jones did die at the end of the story in another house, like the house of another drunkard, but that doesn't mean a psychological change. That is a physical change. Now, you could argue, maybe he did undergo a psychological change, like his psychology was really screwed up after losing his farm, and so he drank even more, and he drank himself into death. But on the test, it would be very simple. Like, for example, Romeo and Juliet, when we watched that, and we read that, Tybalt is a character who, he is completely a monster from the beginning to the end of the play. Like, he just wants to start a fight, and he's never acting right. And so he is that flat static character. Okay, going on. Round dynamic. This is a complex character. And dynamic means this character undergoes a psychological change. Yes, Boxer is complex. Like, he can't read. He believes in Napoleon, but at times he questions. He's a fighter, but he doesn't want to kill. He's very complex. But I would say that he's dynamic because he undergoes the psychological change. He is at the end, like, he realizes like he's being hauled away to the horse slaughterer to make glue, and he literally was the glue that held them all together. Oh, it's a sticky situation, but he is very dynamic, like, because if you remember in the van, he was trying to get out when Benjamin was trying to yell at him. So round dynamic. Round static, this is a character who is complex but doesn't undergo a psychological change. Okay, so this character, Benjamin, he knew from the beginning that the pigs were manipulating. But did that change any of his behaviors? No, because he saw it was pointless to argue. Sometimes it's like so frustrating because you want to be the boxer of your own story. Like, you want to be the hero, right? But does the hero get slain? Like, the boxer is like the Jesus Christ figure. He is the sacrifice, that they make. It's even more sad to be a Benjamin, though, where you know what's going down, but you don't really do anything to stop it. Yes, he tried to save his best friend's boxer's life. Like, he was woke the whole time, but he's still living on the farm, still miserable, and doesn't really undergo any change. So that's my argument. I'm sticking with it with Benjamin. So this is really sad when we put a book like this in the hands of students, because we want you to be a boxer. Like, we want you to be the hero. I guess we want you to be woke and also take action, but just know when you do try to take action, sometimes it's fruitless. Like, sometimes it's pointless. Sometimes when you disturb the universe, you get destroyed. And so I think this is a dangerous book to give to kids. And one interpretation I have seen of Animal Farm is that Benjamin is George Orwell. He is Eric Arthur Blair, because, George Orwell, in being the author of this work, he doesn't ever like put his 2 cents in, but you can tell by using this kind of like cynical character, this donkey Benjamin, he does put some of his own like ideas in the story. It's like he's always the observer, but he's a passive observer. So I think that's really cool how Benjamin is kind of, I think when I read that, I thought, oh, that's really fascinating. I would love to go back in time and talk to George Orwell and ask him, was that his intent? But again, we don't have to look at this story as being something that is just from the Russian Revolution. I mean, we know that Kim Jong-un, is he dead or not? I mean, there's been news stories for 2 weeks suggesting that he's dead. And then they published a photo of him at some fertilizer plant the other day. And everyone is saying it's photoshopped. Here, let me show you. Let's see. Some people said it is manure, that this photo is real. They didn't believe this photo is real, that it's photoshopped. Here he is cutting ribbon, but some people are saying like he could be doing anything. Someone photoshopped him in here. But that could be Napoleon, and in the working class, think of all the people that he has in his camps, his labor camps that we think there are, and then these other guys are these pigs, and like the dogs and everything. So we don't just have to think about this as a story about animals, like, or like it's some sort of Russian Revolution thing. It could be anytime there's indoctrination, propaganda, police terror, totalitarianism, censorship, all that. Okay, so what is a theme? I would say one theme is that sometimes when you think you're fighting for something, it can actually be betrayed. I remember reading Hunger Games, like the 3rd book, and thinking that other president from, I don't know if it was District 13, but she seems like just another President Snow. And for what Katniss thinks she's fighting for could actually be another Snow. So you just have to be careful, and you always have to be like woke to the laws and the rules. And the people must continually fight for their rights to avoid servitude. At some point in America, we are going to have to lead a revolution because our government will become tyrannous. It's very scary. Okay. Oh, in the French Revolution, I just want to tell you about this character, Jean-Paul Marat. Here we go. I can't spell. There we go. Okay, so he led this underground newspaper, and he had to do it from this bathtub. Okay, so he had this really strange disease where he had to sit in a bathtub. He must have had terrible psoriasis, or I don't know quite what it was. Here, let's click and see what Britannica says. But he was a revolutionary even from his like sewer that he lived in. They say he lived in a sewer. Okay, so he was assassinated in his bath. He was, these people, these Girondins, were radical. Oh no, ads. And so what is he famous for? He led this underground newspaper. So, like someday you're gonna have to, rebel against our government, kids. Sorry about it. And I'm happy to help you. Like, I'll set up shop and I'll help you with the paper. I have a typewriter hidden in my head. I know that sounds paranoid, but we don't want to believe all propaganda like we're free. You have to always be watching. You need to know the laws. You need to know what Congress is doing. Okay, so another theme might be that the people in charge do not have everyone's best interests at heart. And I'm not talking about teachers, but I'm talking about, like, if we were going to look at it in our little microcosm, I might say that the government who makes the laws for teachers and principals to follow, the teachers are more like the workers, and so are you guys. You guys are like the workers. And maybe the government that's making all these rules, like maybe they don't have our interests in mind. Maybe you just have to watch out. I'm not saying that's true, but okay, situational irony. This is when something happens that's other than expected, or it's a reversal of fortune. So one example of that in the book is when the animals would betray other animals. Especially because, like we were told in the beginning, all animals are equal. Well, why are some animals killing other animals? Another example in the book, there was some sort of spontaneous demonstration in the book, and it was like to honor Napoleon. But the thing is, it wasn't spontaneous at all. It was all arranged by the pigs and the dogs. Like, it was already planned out. So whenever they would shoot off the guns and everything, like we do on the 4th of July, it's all planned. It's not spontaneous. Okay, and then we've got verbal irony. This is puns, exaggerations, hyperbole. An example is, I couldn't really find any verbal irony in the story, but I would say here's a goofy example. This is my own example. The climax of the novel is utterly a sticky situation. And I say that because Boxer was turned into glue. I know, it's really bad. Anyways. Remember when I always tell you that my voice is getting hoarse because I'm talking about Boxer? That's another bad one. It's not very neighborly. That's verbal irony, okay? Going back to situational irony, since we were talking about Boxer, he was literally the glue that held the farm together, and the pigs turned him into glue. Oh my gosh. Once I found out what Jell-O was made of, kids, I could not eat it anymore. Okay, going on. Dramatic irony. Okay. Boxer being turned into glue, by the way, is situational irony. I don't know if I pointed that out, as that was other than expected. It was definitely a reversal. Okay. Let's see, dramatic irony is anytime the audience knows something the characters don't. I know that Aladdin is just a street rat, as they call him. And I know, like, the Princess Jasmine is really a princess, but maybe the audience knows it, but the characters don't. So that's dramatic irony, because it's dramatic. Audience is aware that Old Major's vision has been twisted, like from chapter 2 and 3, but only some of the animals know, like Benjamin knows. But he just doesn't explain it, because it's just like, sometimes you just can't change it. So 17. Are there allusions or other literary devices? Gosh, there's so many, but the most important one is allegory, you guys. Allegory is like how the windmill represents Stalin's 5-year plan to industrialize Russia, how alcohol represents the intoxicating effects of power, how Boxer represents the working class, how Molly represents the ones who were loyal to the Tsar. Benjamin may just be like George Orwell, we're not really sure, but it's when a symbol stands for an idea. And it could be also like a moral idea, a religious idea, a political idea. So just the farm in itself could represent a government. Frederick was Hitler. Pilkington was England and the leaders, maybe of America, you could say, the West. And remember the card game they were playing when they were congratulating each other? That represents a Tehran conference, because in the end, Stalin and Hitler, of course, they made that non-aggression pact that Hitler would not invade Russia, and they made a deal about Poland. Well, who would trust Hitler? Of course, Hitler's going to invade Russia, and this is such a bloody battle. It was awful. So many slaughters, so many people were killed. The Russian army was absolutely vile. But in the end, of course, Pilkington and Napoleon make a deal instead, because Frederick forged the banknotes. Okay, let me take this out of the allegory for you. World War II, and in the Russian Revolution. Here we have. Sorry, I'm outside. It's such a beautiful day. Oh. But in this time period, like, of course, we have the Winston Churchill, FDR. You saw the picture on the Ed puzzle, but FDR, Winston Churchill meeting with Stalin in Tehran, that's Iran, and making a deal to defeat Hitler. And you can see in the body language of that picture, neither of those guys, Winston Churchill and FDR, wanted to make any deal with Stalin. He's a monster. He's more of a monster than Hitler. But they knew that was the best deal they could make. So what do? After they defeat Hitler, they both throw down the ace of spades in the allegory. That means that they both betrayed Stalin, and Stalin betrayed them, and they were just using each other. What does that say about leaders, guys? That says that all leaders are pigs, because they rolled around the mud with each other. That's just terrifying. Do you see why George Orwell wrote this with animals? Okay. what effect is created by this literary device? Well, this book is definitely didactic. It's instructive towards